There is a system, not a collection of motivational ideas, not a set of inspirational thoughts to make you feel better on a difficult morning. A system. A precise, logical, step-by-step method for understanding how the human mind actually works and how to use that understanding to change every condition of your life deliberately and effectively. Charles Haanel spent years working this out, not as a philosopher in an ivory tower, but as a businessman. A man who had built real success in the real world and who wanted to understand, with the same precision he brought to every other aspect of his work, exactly why some people consistently produce extraordinary results while others, equally intelligent and equally hardworking, consistently fall short of what they are genuinely capable of. What he discovered became this book. It was originally published not as a book at all, but as a correspondence course. 24 lessons sent one at a time to students who worked through each one carefully before receiving the next. The structure was deliberate, each lesson built on the one before. Each idea prepared the ground for the idea that followed. Nothing was wasted, nothing was out of order. That structure is preserved here. Each chapter is a complete lesson. Each lesson is a step in a single continuous direction. And the direction is always the same, inward, toward the understanding of the system that is already operating in your life, whether you know it or not, and toward the practical mastery of that system so that it works for you deliberately rather than against you unconsciously. Napoleon Hill studied this book. He called it one of the most important influences on his thinking. Countless others across more than a century have returned to these pages and found something new each time. Now it is yours. Work through it carefully. Give each chapter the attention it deserves. And by the time you reach the end, you will have something genuinely rare. Not just knowledge about how the mind works, but a real, working, practical understanding of how to use it. That understanding changes everything. The Master KEY, there is something operating in your life right now that you have never fully seen. It is not hidden from you because someone chose to keep it secret. It is not beyond your reach because you lack the intelligence or the capacity to grasp it. It is unseen for the simplest of reasons. Nobody ever showed it to you directly. And because it was never shown to you directly, you have been living with it, using it, being shaped by it every single day of your life without ever quite understanding what it actually is. It is the system by which your inner world creates your outer world. Haanel calls it the Master Key, not because it is mysterious or magical, but because it is the single understanding that unlocks everything else. The key that, once you have it, opens every door. The principle that, once genuinely grasped, explains every success and every failure, every achievement and every limitation, every condition of every life that has ever been lived. Here is that principle stated as directly as possible. The outer world of circumstance is shaped by the inner world of thought. Everything you experience in your external life, your financial conditions, your relationships, your health, your opportunities, your daily experience of what is possible and what is not, is the expression of something happening in your inner life, in your habitual patterns of thought and belief. In the deep, consistent, largely unconscious quality of your inner world, this is not a new idea. Thoughtful people in every era have arrived at some version of it, but Haanel's contribution is not the idea itself. It is the system. The precise, logical, step-by-step explanation of exactly how the inner world shapes the outer, exactly what the mechanism is, exactly how it operates, and exactly what you need to do to work with it deliberately and effectively. He begins with the most fundamental distinction in the entire system. There are two minds operating in every human being simultaneously. Haanel calls them the conscious mind and the subconscious mind. You have encountered this distinction before in various forms. But Haanel's description of it is worth hearing carefully because the precision of his language reveals something that vaguer descriptions miss. The conscious mind is the mind of your waking awareness. It is the mind that is engaging with these words right now. It reasons. It analyzes. It compares and evaluates and makes decisions. It is in contact with the outer world through your five senses. It gathers information from your environment and works with that information deliberately and consciously. The subconscious mind operates entirely differently. It does not reason or evaluate. It does not gather information from the outer world through the senses. It operates from within. It manages the vast automatic processes of your body without any conscious direction. It maintains your heartbeat, your breathing, your digestion, your immune response, and 10,000 other biological functions simultaneously, with a precision and a complexity that no conscious effort could replicate. But it does something else as well. Something that is far more significant for understanding why your life looks the way it does. It expresses in your outer experience the beliefs and convictions and habitual patterns of thought that have been impressed upon it over the course of your life. Whatever the subconscious mind genuinely holds as its operative reality, it works to express in the conditions of your outer experience. Not sometimes, not when conditions happen to be favorable, always, continuously. With the same faithful consistency with which it manages the beating of your heart. And here is what makes this the most important thing you can possibly understand about your own life. The subconscious mind does not evaluate what it has been given. It does not look at the beliefs and convictions impressed upon it and decide which ones are helpful and which ones are not. It simply receives and expresses. Whatever is genuinely present at the subconscious level becomes the operative reality from which the conditions of your outer life are shaped. This means that the conditions of your life right now are the precise and accurate expression of what is genuinely present in your subconscious mind right now. Not what you consciously wish were true, not what you intellectually believe should be true. What is actually, genuinely, deeply present at the subconscious level. And the master key, the single understanding that changes everything, is this. The conscious mind has the power to impress the subconscious mind. You are not at the mercy of whatever patterns happen to have been deposited in your subconscious by the experiences of your past. You have the capacity, through the deliberate and skillful use of your conscious mind, to impress new patterns, deeper truths, more accurate and more powerful beliefs about what you are and what is genuinely possible for you. And as those new patterns are genuinely established at the subconscious level, the conditions of your outer life begin to shift. Not because you have forced them to change from the outside, but because the interior cause from which they are expressed has genuinely changed. That is the master key. That is the system. And everything that follows in this book is the precise, step-by-step explanation of how to use it. Conditions, what if the circumstances holding you back right now are not the real problem? What if they are simply the reflection of something much closer to home? Most people spend their lives fighting their conditions, fighting the financial situation that will not improve, fighting the relationships that will not change, fighting the opportunities that will not appear no matter how hard they work or how carefully they plan. They push against the outside world with everything they have, and the outside world pushes back with equal force. What Haanel understood, and what this chapter is going to make absolutely clear, is that fighting conditions is fighting the wrong thing entirely, because conditions are not causes. They are effects. Every condition in your life, without a single exception, is the outward expression of an inward state. Your financial situation is the expression of your financial consciousness. Your relationships are the expression of the quality of thought and belief you habitually bring to human connection. Your health is the expression of the mental and emotional patterns your subconscious mind has been working from. Your opportunities, or the absence of them, are the expression of what your deeper mind genuinely believes is available to you. The condition is always downstream of the cause. And the cause is always interior. This is why two people can face identical external circumstances and produce completely different results. Same economy, same industry, same starting point, and one person finds a way through while the other remains stuck. The difference is not in the conditions. The conditions are the same. The difference is in the interior state from which each person is approaching those conditions. And interior states, working through the subconscious mind, shape what each person perceives, what each person attempts, and ultimately what each person achieves. Haanel is precise about what this means practically. If conditions are effects, then changing your conditions requires changing their cause. And changing their cause requires working at the interior level where the cause actually lies. In the deep, habitual, largely unconscious patterns of thought and belief that your subconscious mind is working from moment by moment. You cannot think your way out of conditions by reasoning with the conscious mind alone. You cannot force conditions to change by pushing harder against them from the outside. You change conditions by changing the interior state that is generating them. By impressing the subconscious mind with something truer and more powerful than what it has been working from. And here is what makes this genuinely liberating rather than simply demanding. If your conditions are the expression of your interior state, then your conditions are completely within your sphere of influence. Not because you can control every external event, you cannot. But because you can work on the interior cause. You can, through understanding and through consistent practice, genuinely shift what your subconscious mind is working from. And as that interior cause shifts, the conditions that are its expression shift with it. This is not a slow or uncertain process when it is done correctly. The subconscious mind is extraordinarily responsive to genuine impression. When a new and deeper truth reaches it with real conviction, it begins immediately to work from that new truth. The conditions begin to shift. Not always dramatically or immediately at the surface level. But the movement begins at the interior level the moment the genuine impression is made. Haanel closes this chapter with a thought that is worth carrying into everything that follows. He says that the person who understands the relationship between interior cause and exterior condition has something that no external circumstance can take away. They have the knowledge that they are never at the mercy of their conditions. That they always have access to the level where conditions are shaped. That regardless of what the exterior world is currently reflecting, the interior work that will change it is always available and always effective. That knowledge is itself a cause. And it begins producing its effects the moment it is genuinely held. The solar plexus, you have more power inside you right now than you have ever used, not potential power. Not future power. Power that is present and available and waiting to be directed. And almost nobody ever tells you where it actually lies. Most people look for their strength in the wrong places, in their discipline, in their strategy, in their willpower. These things matter, but they are not the source. They are the expressions of a source that runs deeper than any of them. Haanel points to something in this chapter that sounds unusual at first. He speaks of the solar plexus as the seat of the individual's connection to universal power, not in a vague metaphorical sense, in a precise and functional sense. The solar plexus, that network of nerves located in the center of the body, is the physical point through which the energy of universal mind flows into the individual organism. Think of it this way. Every electrical device needs a point of connection to the power source. The device itself does not generate the power, it receives the power through the connection and expresses it in its particular function. The solar plexus is that point of connection in the human being. The place where universal energy enters the individual system and becomes available for personal expression. When that connection is open and unobstructed, the individual has access to a depth of vitality, of creative energy, of confident forward movement that goes far beyond what personal effort alone can generate. Things that seemed difficult become manageable. Opportunities that seemed invisible become apparent. The quality of thought sharpens. The capacity for effective action increases. Everything works better because the underlying energy source is flowing freely. When that connection is obstructed, the opposite occurs. The individual is cut off from their deepest source of power and left to operate on the limited reserves of personal effort alone. Fatigue sets in more quickly. Problems feel heavier. Creativity dims. The sense of possibility narrows. What obstructs the connection? Haanel is direct about this. Fear obstructs it. Worry obstructs it. Doubt obstructs it. Anxiety obstructs it. Every form of negative thought and feeling that the individual habitually entertains creates tension in the system that restricts the free flow of universal energy through the solar plexus into conscious experience. And here is what makes this practically significant. The obstruction is not created by external circumstances. It is created by the individual's response to external circumstances, by the habitual mental and emotional patterns through which they process what happens to them. Which means the obstruction is always, in principle, within the individual's power to remove. The method Haanel prescribes for keeping the connection open is not complicated. It is the consistent cultivation of the mental states that allow free flow. Confidence rather than fear. Trust rather than anxiety. The genuine inner expectation of good rather than the habitual anticipation of difficulty. These are not merely pleasant attitudes to adopt for their own sake. They are the precise inner conditions that keep the channel between the individual and universal power open and functioning at full capacity. Haanel also speaks of the importance of what he calls a relaxed and receptive state, not the relaxation of someone who has given up, but the relaxation of someone who is genuinely open, who is not gripping tightly on outcomes or straining anxiously toward results, who trusts the connection enough to allow the power to flow rather than trying to force it through sheer personal effort. This quality of relaxed, confident openness is itself a skill. It is developed through understanding and through consistent practice. And as it develops, something changes in the quality of daily experience that is difficult to describe but impossible to miss once it is present. The sense of being supported, of having access to something larger than personal effort, of moving through life with a quality of ease and confidence that has nothing to do with the absence of challenges and everything to do with the depth of the connection to the source of genuine power. That connection is yours by nature. The only question is whether you are keeping it open. The conscious mind, most people think they know what their conscious mind is. They think it is their thoughts, their opinions, their decisions. The running commentary that fills their waking hours from the moment they open their eyes until the moment they close them at night. But that is only the surface of it. Haanel goes deeper. And what he reveals about the conscious mind in this chapter changes the way you understand your own power to shape your experience. The conscious mind is the gatekeeper, not just a thinking machine, not just a problem-solving tool. The conscious mind is the single most important filter in your entire mental system. Because everything that reaches the subconscious mind, everything that gets to the level where actual creation happens, must pass through the conscious mind first. This means something extraordinary. It means you have more control over what shapes your life than you have ever been led to believe. Because you have control over the gate. You have the power to decide what gets through and what does not. What impressions are allowed to reach the creative depths of the subconscious, and what impressions are turned away before they can take root. Most people never exercise this power deliberately. They leave the gate unguarded. Every fear that arises passes straight through. Every doubt, every worry, every negative suggestion from the world around them walks directly into the subconscious without any conscious examination or deliberate choice about whether it should be allowed in. And the subconscious, receiving all of it with perfect faithfulness, works to express all of it in the conditions of outer experience. Haanel says this is the primary reason most people feel that life is happening to them rather than being shaped by them. Not because they lack power, but because they are not using the power they have. The gate is open and unguarded, and everything is walking through. The practice of guarding the gate is not complicated in principle. It is demanding in practice. It requires the development of a genuine quality of inner watchfulness. An alert, ongoing awareness of what you are allowing your conscious mind to dwell on, what thoughts you are entertaining, what beliefs you are giving your genuine inner attention to, because the subconscious does not respond to what passes through the conscious mind casually or briefly. It responds to what the conscious mind genuinely dwells on, what it returns to consistently, what it holds with real inner attention and real inner feeling. A fear that flickers through the mind and is immediately recognized and released does not deeply impress the subconscious. A fear that is entertained, examined, worried over, returned to repeatedly, held with genuine inner feeling, impresses the subconscious deeply. And the subconscious works to express it. The same is true of every positive conception. A vision of success held briefly and then forgotten does not deeply impress the subconscious. A vision held consistently, returned to regularly, dwelt on with genuine inner conviction and genuine inner feeling, impresses the subconscious deeply. And the subconscious works to express that instead. This is the practical power of the conscious mind, not just to think, but to choose what to think about, to select deliberately and consistently the impressions that are given genuine inner attention. And in doing so, to determine what reaches the subconscious, and therefore what gets expressed in the conditions of outer experience. Haanel speaks of this as one of the highest functions available to a human being. The capacity to stand at the gate of your own mind and choose, with genuine awareness and genuine intention, what you will allow to shape your deeper creative nature. It is a capacity that develops with practice. In the beginning, the mind drifts constantly, returning to fears and doubts and familiar negative patterns without any conscious direction. The practice is simply to notice the drift and return, again and again, without frustration. With the patient consistency of someone who understands that this is exactly how the subconscious is gradually and genuinely changed, over time, the conscious mind becomes stronger in its gatekeeper function. More alert, more deliberate, more consistently able to choose what gets through. And as it does, the conditions of outer experience begin to reflect the new quality of what is being allowed in. The gate was always yours. You are simply learning to use it. The subconscious mind, what if the most powerful part of your mind has been working against you this entire time? Not because it is broken, not because something is wrong with you, but simply because nobody ever showed you how it actually works. The subconscious mind is the most powerful creative force available to a human being. More powerful than conscious willpower. More powerful than strategy or planning or disciplined effort. More powerful than any external resource you could ever acquire. And yet most people spend their entire lives completely unaware of what it is doing or how to work with it deliberately. Haanel devotes this chapter to a precise and practical understanding of the subconscious mind. Not as a mysterious or mystical concept, but as a real and functional part of the mental system, whose operation follows consistent and learnable laws. Here is what the subconscious mind actually is. It is the part of your mental life that operates below the threshold of conscious awareness. It manages the automatic functions of your body without any conscious direction. It maintains your heartbeat, your breathing, your immune response, and thousands of other biological processes simultaneously. It does all of this perfectly, continuously, and without ever asking the conscious mind for permission or guidance. But it does something else as well. Something far more significant for understanding the shape of your daily life. It expresses in your outer experience whatever it genuinely holds as its operative reality. The subconscious mind does not evaluate what it has been given. It does not look at the beliefs and patterns impressed upon it and decide which ones are helpful or accurate or worth expressing. It simply receives and expresses. Whatever is genuinely present at the subconscious level becomes the working reality from which the conditions of your outer life are shaped. This is the key to everything, because it means that the conditions of your life right now are not random. They are not the result of luck or circumstance or the decisions of other people. They are the precise and accurate expression of what is genuinely held at the subconscious level of your mind right now. Which means that changing your conditions requires changing what your subconscious mind is working from, and this is where most people make the critical mistake. They try to change their subconscious patterns through conscious reasoning, through argument, through telling themselves repeatedly that they should think differently, through willpower applied directly at the level of thought. But the subconscious mind is not changed by argument. It is not impressed by reasoning or by conscious decision. It operates through an entirely different mechanism. It is changed by impression, by the quality and consistency of what the conscious mind genuinely dwells on with real feeling and real inner conviction. When the conscious mind holds an idea with genuine feeling, when it returns to that idea consistently and dwells on it with real inner attention, that idea impresses itself on the subconscious. The subconscious receives it as a genuine condition and begins working to express it in the outer circumstances of life. This is not slow or uncertain when it is done correctly. The subconscious mind is extraordinarily responsive to genuine impression. A deep and consistent impression reaches it quickly and sets the creative process in motion immediately. Haanel makes a point here that carries enormous practical weight. He says the subconscious mind is always working, always creating, always expressing something. The question is never whether it is active. The question is what it is working from, what impressions it has received, what patterns it is currently expressing, and the answer to that question is visible in the conditions of your life right now, not as a judgment, not as evidence of failure or unworthiness, but as information, as the precise and honest reflection of what your subconscious mind has been working from up to this point. Information can be changed, patterns can be replaced, new impressions can be made. And the subconscious mind, receiving those new impressions with the same faithful consistency with which it received the old ones, will begin expressing them with equal reliability in the conditions of your outer experience. That process begins the moment you genuinely understand what you are working with, and that understanding is now yours. The universal mind, there is a question that almost nobody asks, and it is the most important question in this entire book. Where does your mind end and the rest of the universe begin? Most people assume the answer is obvious. Your mind is inside your head. The universe is everything outside it, a clear boundary, a definite separation, you on one side, everything else on the other. But Haanel says this assumption, comfortable and familiar as it is fundamentally wrong. And the implications of that wrongness change everything about what you believe is possible for you. Here is what Haanel actually means by the universal mind. There is an intelligence that underlies and permeates all things, not a distant or abstract intelligence, not something operating somewhere beyond the physical universe with no direct connection to your daily experience. An intelligence that is present everywhere simultaneously. In every atom of matter, in every living cell, in every human mind, in the space between stars and in the space between your thoughts. This intelligence is what Haanel calls the universal mind, and it is not separate from your individual mind, it is the source of it. Your conscious mind and your subconscious mind are not isolated systems generating their own power from within. They are individualized expressions of a universal intelligence that is infinitely larger than any individual, and yet fully present at every individual point. Think of the ocean and the wave. The wave is real. It has its own shape, its own movement, its own particular expression, but it is not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean expressing itself in a particular form at a particular place. Remove the ocean and there is no wave. The wave exists because the ocean exists. It moves because the ocean moves. Its power is the ocean's power expressed through a particular form. You are the wave. Universal mind is the ocean. Your individual mind is a real and genuine expression of something infinitely larger. And the power available to you through that connection is not limited by what your individual conscious mind can see or plan or generate through personal effort alone. This is not philosophy for its own sake. Haanel is making a precise and practical point. When you understand that your individual mind is connected to universal mind, the question of what is possible for you changes completely. You are no longer limited to the resources visible from your individual vantage point. You have access, through the subconscious mind's deep connection to universal mind, to a field of intelligence and creative capacity that extends far beyond anything personal effort alone can reach. The scientist who solves a problem that has resisted every conscious effort in a sudden moment of quiet insight is drawing on this connection. The entrepreneur who sees an opportunity that everyone else has missed is drawing on this connection. The artist whose work touches something universal in every person who encounters it is drawing on this connection. They are not special. They are not uniquely gifted in some way that others are not. They have, through understanding or through practice, or through some combination of both, learned to keep the channel between individual mind and universal mind open and functioning. And the channel is kept open through exactly the qualities we have been discussing throughout this book. Through the consistent cultivation of the mental states that allow free flow. Through the deliberate guarding of the conscious mind's gate. Through the genuine impression of clear and powerful conceptions on the subconscious mind. Through the relaxed and receptive inner quality that allows the deeper intelligence to communicate its guidance clearly. Haanel closes this chapter with a thought that reframes everything that has come before. He says that working with these principles is not the individual trying to impose their will on the universe. It is the individual learning to align their individual will with the intelligence of universal mind, learning to move with the current rather than against it, learning to express through their particular individual center something that the universe itself is seeking to express. That alignment is the source of all genuine power, and it is available to you right now. Visualization here is something that separates the people who consistently achieve what they want from the people who consistently fall short. It is not intelligence. It is not talent. It is not even effort. It is the ability to see clearly what does not yet exist. Most people can only see what is already in front of them. They look at their current circumstances, and they take those circumstances as the definition of what is real and what is possible. The conditions they are living in become the boundaries of their imagination. And because their imagination cannot reach beyond their current conditions never change. Haanel calls this the fundamental mistake. And in this chapter, he introduces the practice that corrects it. That practice is visualization, not daydreaming. Not the casual imagining of pleasant futures that occupies the mind for a few minutes, and then dissolves without leaving any impression. But a deliberate, precise, disciplined mental activity through which a clear and specific image of the desired reality is constructed and held in the mind with genuine inner conviction. Haanel is very specific about what genuine visualization actually involves. It begins with clarity. The image must be definite, not a vague sense of things being better, not a general feeling of success or abundance. A specific, concrete, detailed mental picture of the exact reality you intend to create. The more specific and the more detailed the image, the more powerfully it impresses the subconscious mind. The more powerfully it impresses the subconscious mind, the more consistently and effectively the creative process works. Think of the architect. Before a single foundation is dug, the building exists completely in the architect's mind. Every room, every dimension, every relationship between spaces. The architect does not hope vaguely that a building will somehow appear. The architect knows exactly what is to be built because they have already built it completely in their imagination. The physical construction is simply the outer expression of an inner reality that already exists in full detail. This is the quality of visualization Haanel is pointing to. Not wishing, knowing, the inner certainty of someone who has already seen the completed reality and is now simply watching it move from the mental level into physical expression. But clarity alone is not enough. Haanel adds a second essential element, feeling. The mental image must be held with genuine feeling, with the real inner sense of what it would feel like to be living in that reality right now, not the feeling of wanting it, the feeling of having it, of it being present, of it being the actual current condition of your life. This is the element that transforms visualization from an intellectual exercise into a genuine creative act. The subconscious mind is not deeply impressed by pictures alone. It is deeply impressed by felt experience, by the quality of inner reality that the conscious mind brings to the image it is holding. When clarity and feeling are combined, when a specific and detailed mental image is held with the genuine inner sense of its present reality, the subconscious mind receives it as an actual condition and begins working immediately to express it in outer experience. Haanel also addresses something that many people struggle with when they first begin practicing visualization. The image does not stay clear. The mind wanders. Other thoughts intrude. The surface noise of daily life competes constantly for attention and pulls the mind away from the image before it has been held long enough to make a genuine impression. This is normal. It is the expected experience of anyone beginning this practice. And the response to it is not frustration or discouragement, but patient persistence. The practice is simply to notice the drift and return, to bring the mind back to the clear specific image with the quality of genuine feeling, again and again, without judgment. With the steady consistency of someone who understands that this is exactly how the subconscious is gradually and genuinely impressed. Over time, the capacity to hold a clear image with genuine feeling for sustained periods develops naturally. And as it develops, the creative process it sets in motion becomes more powerful and more consistently effective. The image you hold in your mind with genuine feeling today is the condition of your life tomorrow. Hold it clearly, hold it consistently. Hold it with the certainty of someone who already knows. The imagination, what is the most powerful tool a human being possesses, not money, not connections, not talent or education or the particular circumstances of birth. These things matter. But they are all secondary to something that every single human being possesses equally, and that most people use at a fraction of its actual capacity. That tool is the imagination, not imagination in the limited sense of fantasy or creative entertainment. Imagination in the precise sense that Haanel means here. The capacity to form mental images of realities that do not yet exist in physical form, to see the invisible before it becomes visible, to work at the level of cause before the effect has appeared. Haanel makes a distinction in this chapter that is subtle but absolutely essential. He separates what he calls constructive imagination from what he calls synthetic imagination. Synthetic imagination works with what already exists. It takes existing ideas, existing forms, existing combinations of what is already known, and rearranges them in new configurations. This is useful. It is the basis of most ordinary problem solving and most conventional creativity. But it is limited by definition. It can only produce variations of what already exists. It cannot produce anything genuinely new. Constructive imagination operates differently. It reaches beyond what already exists and draws on the deeper intelligence of universal mind to bring into awareness ideas and possibilities and solutions that have no precedent in what is currently known. This is the imagination that produces genuine breakthroughs, that sees entirely new possibilities where others see only the limits of the familiar, that draws on a source of creative intelligence that extends far beyond the individual's personal knowledge and experience. The difference between these two forms of imagination is not a difference in the person using them. It is a difference in the level of mind being drawn upon. Synthetic imagination operates primarily at the level of the conscious mind, working with what the conscious mind already contains. Constructive imagination operates through the connection between the individual mind and universal mind, drawing on a field of creative intelligence that is not limited by what the individual has previously encountered or learned. And the access to constructive imagination is developed through exactly the practices this book has been describing. Through the consistent cultivation of inner stillness, through the genuine impression of clear and specific images on the subconscious mind, through the quality of relaxed and receptive attention that allows deeper intelligence to communicate freely with conscious awareness. Haanel makes a point here that carries significant practical weight for anyone working seriously with these principles. He says that the imagination is not merely a tool for creating pleasant mental pictures. It is the primary instrument through which the individual participates in the creative process of universal mind. When you use your imagination constructively, when you form clear and genuine mental images of realities you intend to bring into being and hold them with real inner conviction, you are not engaging in a private mental exercise with no connection to the outer world. You are working at the level where the outer world is actually shaped. The mental image held clearly and consistently in constructive imagination is not a representation of a desired future. It is the interior cause of a future that is already in the process of becoming real. This reframes the practice of visualization from the previous chapter in an important way. Visualization is not a technique you perform and then wait to see if it works. It is the direct exercise of your capacity to participate in creation at its source. Every moment of genuine constructive imagination is a moment of real creative work at the level where creation actually happens. Haanel also speaks of the importance of what he calls ideal images. Images not of what you merely want, but of what genuinely represents the fullest and most complete expression of your real potential. The imagination works most powerfully when it is aimed not at small adjustments to current conditions, but at the genuine realization of what you are actually capable of becoming. Small images produce small results. Large images, held with the same quality of genuine inner conviction, draw on the same creative law and work through the same mechanism. The law does not distinguish between a small request and a large one. It responds to the quality and consistency of the impression. Aim higher. Imagine more completely. The creative law is equal to whatever you bring to it. Concentration, what separates the person who achieves extraordinary results from the person who works just as hard and achieves ordinary ones. It is not the quantity of effort. It is the quality of focus. Most people spread their mental energy across dozens of competing thoughts, worries, plans, and distractions simultaneously. Their attention is never fully present anywhere. It is always partially here and partially somewhere else. And energy that is divided among many things is weak in all of them. Like sunlight spread across a field, warm but not powerful enough to ignite anything, concentrated sunlight through a single lens can start a fire. Concentrated mental energy works the same way. Haanel considers concentration the single most important practical skill in the entire master key system. Not because it is more important than understanding the principles, but because without concentration, the principles cannot be effectively applied. The clearest understanding in the world produces nothing if the mind cannot hold its attention steadily enough to impress the subconscious with genuine conviction. Concentration, in Haanel's precise sense, is the ability to hold the conscious mind focused on a single chosen object with complete attention and genuine inner engagement for a sustained period. Not the tense, forced, effortful gripping of attention that most people attempt when they try to concentrate, but a relaxed, alert, genuinely absorbed quality of focus in which the chosen object fills the entire field of conscious awareness and everything else temporarily recedes. This distinction between forced concentration and genuine concentration is essential. Forced concentration creates tension. And tension, as we have already established, obstructs the free flow of energy through the system. It closes the channel between individual mind and universal mind rather than opening it. The person who strains to concentrate with white-knuckled effort is actually making the creative process less effective, even as they are trying to make it more so. Genuine concentration is effortless in quality, even though it requires genuine discipline to develop. It is the natural absorption of a mind that is genuinely interested and genuinely engaged. When you are truly interested in something, concentration happens without effort. The mind moves toward it naturally and stays there willingly. The practice of developing concentration is therefore, in one sense, the practice of developing genuine interest, of bringing real engagement and real inner attention to the object of your focus, rather than merely pointing the mind in its direction and hoping it stays there. Haanel prescribes a specific daily practice for developing the power of concentration. He recommends beginning with short periods of deliberate focus on a single simple object. Not a complex visualization or an elaborate mental construction, something simple, a point of light, a geometric shape, a single word. The practice is to hold the mind on that single object with complete attention for a defined period. When the mind drifts, which it will, the practice is simply to notice the drift and return, without frustration. With the patient consistency of someone training a muscle that has never been properly exercised, over time, the periods of genuine focus lengthen naturally. The mind becomes more responsive to conscious direction. The quality of attention available for impressing the subconscious with clear and powerful images deepens significantly. And as it deepens, something changes in the quality of daily experience that is immediately noticeable. Problems that seemed complex become clearer. Solutions that were invisible become apparent. The creative process that was working sluggishly begins to work with new speed and new power. Because the energy that was previously scattered across a dozen competing concerns is now available to be directed with full force toward a single chosen end. Haanel also makes a point about concentration and the outer world that is worth carrying carefully. He says that the person who has developed genuine powers of concentration has an advantage in every area of life that goes far beyond the direct application of these principles. In conversation, in negotiation, in creative work, in every human endeavor that requires sustained mental engagement, the person whose mind is truly present and truly focused operates at a level that the scattered and distracted mind simply cannot match. Concentration is not just a tool for impressing the subconscious. It is the foundation of every form of genuine excellence. Develop it daily, protect it fiercely. It is among the most valuable things you will ever build. Abundance here is a belief that most people carry without ever examining it directly, that there is not enough money, not enough opportunity, not enough success to go around. That the world operates on a fixed and limited supply of good things, and that getting more for yourself inevitably means less for someone else. That abundance is something that exists for certain people in certain circumstances, and that the rest must compete fiercely for whatever remains. This belief feels like realism. It feels like the honest assessment of how the world actually works. But Haanel says it is not realism at all. It is the single most expensive mental habit a human being can carry. Because if the subconscious mind holds a genuine, deep conviction of scarcity, it will express that conviction in the conditions of outer experience with perfect and unwavering consistency. Not because the world is actually scarce, but because the subconscious mind shapes what the individual perceives, what they attempt, what they believe is available to them, and ultimately what they receive. A mind genuinely convinced of scarcity will find evidence of scarcity everywhere it looks, and will consistently produce conditions that confirm and reinforce that conviction. The conviction creates the experience, not the other way around. Haanel directs our attention to the nature of the universe itself as the correction to this deeply held error. The universe is not operating from a fixed and limited supply. It is operating from a source of creative intelligence and energy that is, by every measure available to human understanding, without limit. The same intelligence that produced one galaxy produced 100 billion of them. The same creative power that grew one forest grew 10,000. The same principle that allows one human being to build genuine wealth and genuine achievement is equally available to every other human being without diminishment. Abundance is not a fixed quantity to be divided among competing claimants. It is a principle, a quality of the universe itself, an expression of the infinite creative capacity of universal mind working through individual centers of consciousness. And access to that abundance is determined not by external circumstance, but by interior conviction. The person whose subconscious mind genuinely holds abundance as its operative reality perceives opportunities that the scarcity-minded person cannot see. They take actions the scarcity-minded person would never attempt. They attract conditions and resources and connections that the scarcity-minded person never encounters, not because the world is treating them differently, but because their interior conviction is shaping their perception and their action, and ultimately their experience in a fundamentally different way. Haanel is precise about what shifting from a scarcity conviction to an abundance conviction actually requires. It is not the mechanical repetition of positive statements about abundance while the subconscious mind continues to hold its deep conviction of lack. The subconscious is not changed by words spoken without genuine inner feeling. It is changed by genuine impression. By the consistent cultivation of the felt sense of abundance as present reality rather than future hope. This begins with a shift in attention. Most people whose subconscious holds a scarcity conviction habitually focus their attention on what is lacking, on the gap between where they are and where they want to be, on the evidence of limitation that their current conditions provide. And every moment of genuine attention given to lack deepens the subconscious conviction of lack and strengthens its expression in outer experience. The practice Haanel prescribes is the deliberate and consistent redirection of attention toward what is already present, not as a denial of genuine challenges, but as the conscious choice to give genuine inner attention to the evidence of abundance that is always present alongside the evidence of limitation if the mind is willing to look for it. Over time, this consistent redirection of attention begins to shift the subconscious conviction. The felt sense of abundance as a present reality gradually deepens, and as it deepens, the conditions of outer experience begin to reflect it with increasing consistency. Abundance is not something you acquire from outside, it is something you express from within. And the expression begins the moment the conviction becomes genuine. Wealth, most people have a complicated relationship with money. They want it. They need it. They spend enormous amounts of time and energy thinking about it, worrying about it, working for it. And yet for most people the results never quite match the effort. The money comes and goes. The financial pressure never fully lifts. The sense of genuine financial freedom remains always just out of reach no matter how hard they work or how carefully they plan. Haanel says the reason is precise and correctable. Most people approach wealth as an external problem, as a question of finding the right strategy, the right opportunity, the right combination of effort and circumstance that will finally produce the financial results they are working toward. They focus entirely on the outer mechanics of wealth creation and completely ignore the interior condition from which those outer mechanics either work effectively or fail consistently. But wealth, like every other condition of human experience, is an expression of an interior state. It is the outer reflection of an inner conviction. And until that inner conviction genuinely changes, no amount of outer strategy or outer effort will produce lasting financial change. The interior condition that produces wealth is what Haanel calls wealth consciousness, not the desire for wealth, not the intention to become wealthy, but the genuine, deep, subconscious conviction of wealth as a present reality. The felt sense of abundance and financial sufficiency as the actual current condition of your inner life, from which the outer conditions of financial experience naturally and consistently follow. This sounds counterintuitive to most people. How can you hold a genuine conviction of wealth when the outer conditions of your financial life are clearly reflecting something different? Haanel's answer is the same answer that runs through every chapter of this book, because the outer conditions are the effect. The interior conviction is the cause, and you work at the level of cause, not the level of effect. You establish the interior conviction first, not because you are pretending that current outer conditions do not exist, but because you understand which one is the cause and which one is the reflection. The conviction changes the conditions, not the other way around. He also addresses something about wealth that is often misunderstood when these principles are applied to financial life. Wealth consciousness is not simply about money. It is about value, about the genuine capacity to create value for others and to receive value in return. The person whose subconscious mind genuinely holds wealth consciousness does not only attract money. They attract the ideas, the connections, the opportunities, and the creative capacity through which genuine value is created. The money is the natural expression of that value creation working through a mind that is genuinely open to receiving it. This is why Haanel connects wealth so directly to service, to the genuine contribution of something valuable to the lives of others. The mind that is focused on creating genuine value, that is genuinely interested in solving real problems and meeting real needs, is a mind that is aligned with the creative principle through which wealth naturally flows. The money follows the value, and the value follows the genuine orientation of a mind that is focused outward on contribution rather than inward on acquisition. Haanel makes a further point about the specific mental habits that obstruct wealth consciousness and keep people financially stuck regardless of their outer efforts. Fear of poverty is the most destructive of these, not because poverty itself is inevitable for anyone who fears it, but because the fear of poverty impresses the subconscious with the vivid and emotionally charged reality of poverty as a genuine possibility. And the subconscious, receiving that impression, works to express it. The very thing that is most feared becomes the condition that is most consistently created. The correction is not to pretend that financial challenges do not exist. It is to refuse to give them the quality of genuine inner attention that would impress them deeply on the subconscious. To redirect that attention consistently toward the reality of wealth as a present inner conviction. To hold the image of genuine financial freedom with the same emotional charge that the fear of poverty currently carries. That redirection, practiced consistently and genuinely, shifts the subconscious conviction over time, and the outer conditions follow. They always do. The creative power of thought. Every condition in your life was once a thought, not a wish, not a hope, not a passing idea that flickered through your mind and disappeared. A thought that was held consistently, returned to repeatedly, and felt genuinely at the deeper levels of your inner life. This is not a poetic statement. It is a precise description of how the physical world actually works at the level where it is actually shaped. Haanel devotes this chapter to something that the previous chapters have been building toward from the beginning. The direct, unambiguous statement of what thought actually is and what it actually does. Not thought as a private internal experience with no connection to the outer world, but thought as a genuine creative force. As real and as consequential in its effects as any physical force operating in the material universe, most people treat their thoughts as passive, as reactions to what is happening around them rather than as forces shaping what will happen around them. They think because circumstances prompt them to think. They feel because events cause them to feel. The inner life is experienced as a commentary on the outer world rather than as a cause of it. Haanel reverses this completely. Thought is not a reaction to the world. It is a force acting upon the world, not in some mysterious or metaphorical sense, in a direct and lawful sense. Through the precise mechanism of the subconscious mind's connection to universal mind and the consistent creative process through which interior states become exterior conditions. Every thought held with genuine feeling impresses the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind, working through its connection to universal mind, begins immediately to organize the conditions, the opportunities, the resources, and the circumstances that correspond to that thought. Not through any supernatural intervention, through the consistent operation of a law as reliable as gravity and as impersonal as mathematics. The thought comes first. The condition follows, always. Haanel makes a distinction in this chapter that carries significant practical weight. He separates thoughts of a constructive nature from thoughts of a destructive nature. Not in a moral sense, in a purely functional sense. Constructive thoughts are those that align with the creative principle of universal mind. Thoughts of abundance, of health, of genuine service, of the full and free expression of individual potential. These thoughts, when held consistently and genuinely, set the creative process in motion in a direction that produces expanding conditions of good. Destructive thoughts are those that work against the creative principle. Thoughts of fear, of lack, of resentment, of limitation. These thoughts, when held consistently and genuinely, set the same creative process in motion in a direction that produces contracting conditions of difficulty. The law makes no distinction between the two in terms of whether it responds. It always responds to whatever is genuinely held at the subconscious level with real feeling and real consistency. The nature of what is held determines the nature of what is created. This places an extraordinary responsibility on the individual, not as a burden, as a power, because it means that the quality of your thinking is not a private matter with no consequences beyond your own inner experience. It is the primary determinant of the conditions of your life. The most important creative act available to you is not what you do in the outer world. It is what you consistently think and feel in the inner world. Haanel also addresses something about the creative power of thought that goes beyond the individual. He says that thoughts of a genuinely constructive nature, held by an individual mind with real conviction and real feeling, do not only shape the conditions of that individual's life. They contribute to the quality of the mental atmosphere that surrounds and influences every other mind they come into contact with. A mind genuinely holding abundance affects the minds around it. A mind genuinely holding confidence and creative expectation influences the quality of thought available to those in its presence, not through any deliberate effort to influence others, simply through the natural radiation of the quality of thought that is being consistently held. This is why Haanel considers the development of constructive thinking not only a personal practice, but a genuine contribution to the larger human community. Every mind that genuinely shifts from destructive to constructive thinking makes the world slightly more hospitable to every other mind that is attempting the same shift. Your thoughts matter beyond yourself. Choose them accordingly. The silence in a world that never stops talking, the most radical thing you can do is be still, not the stillness of someone who has given up, not the stillness of exhaustion or defeat. The deliberate, intentional, disciplined stillness of someone who understands that the deepest source of power and guidance is not found in the noise of outer activity, but in the quiet interior that most people never visit long enough to hear. Haanel calls this practice the silence. And he considers it the single most important daily discipline in the entire Master Key system. More important than visualization, more important than affirmation or concentration or any other outer practice, because it is the foundation from which all the others draw their actual power. Here is why everything we have established about how the creative process works points to the same requirement. The subconscious mind must be genuinely impressed. Universal mind must be genuinely accessed. Intuitive guidance must be genuinely received. And all of these require one condition that the busy, noisy, constantly stimulated surface mind consistently fails to provide: Inner stillness. The subconscious mind communicates with the conscious mind primarily through quiet channels. Through the subtle inner knowing that arrives in moments of relaxed attention. Through the creative insight that surfaces when the analytical mind stops working and simply rests. Through the quality of deep inner certainty that is entirely different from the urgent noise of surface thinking and can only be heard when that surface noise quiets enough to allow it through. Most people never hear any of this, not because it is not present, but because their inner life is never quiet enough for it to reach conscious awareness. The constant stimulation of modern life, the endless stream of information and demands and distractions, fills every available moment of inner space with noise. And in that noise, the deeper intelligence of universal mind speaking through the subconscious mind is completely drowned out. The practice of the silence is the deliberate creation of inner space in which that deeper intelligence can be heard. Haanel is specific about how this practice is done. It begins with the physical. Find a quiet place, sit comfortably, close your eyes, and begin the process of releasing the surface mind's constant activity, not by forcing it to stop. Forced stopping is itself a form of activity that creates tension and defeats the purpose. But by gently withdrawing attention from the stream of thoughts and concerns and plans that the surface mind is generating, and allowing that stream to quiet on its own as attention is progressively withdrawn from it. This is not easy in the beginning. The surface mind resists stillness. It generates thoughts with increasing urgency when attention is withdrawn from outer concerns. It reaches for something to process, something to plan, something to worry about. The practice is simply to notice this activity without engaging with it. To observe the thoughts arising without following them. To allow them to pass without giving them the quality of genuine inner attention that would pull the mind back into its habitual noise. Over time, the surface mind quiets, not permanently, not completely, but enough. Enough for the deeper quality of inner awareness to become perceptible. Enough for the guidance of universal mind to reach conscious awareness with clarity and precision. Haanel speaks of what becomes available in that genuine stillness. The first thing that becomes available is a quality of inner peace that is entirely different from the relief that comes from solving an outer problem. It is not dependent on outer conditions. It is not the absence of challenge or difficulty. It is the direct experience of something in the interior of the individual that is not touched by outer conditions. A quality of settled, grounded, unshakable inner okayness that the surface mind, for all its activity, can never produce and never finds. The second thing that becomes available is genuine creative insight, the solutions to problems that conscious reasoning could not reach, the ideas that constructive imagination could not generate through effort alone. The next steps that intuition has been trying to communicate through the noise of surface thinking. In the stillness, these things become clear with a naturalness and a completeness that is startling the first time it is genuinely experienced. The third thing that becomes available is the direct sense of connection to universal mind, not as a concept, not as a philosophical proposition, as a felt reality. The individual awareness of being part of something infinitely larger than the individual. Of being supported by and connected to a creative intelligence that is not limited by anything the individual conscious mind can see or plan for. This experience, however brief it may initially be, changes something at the subconscious level that no amount of outer technique can change. It impresses the subconscious with the direct felt reality of the connection to universal mind. And that impression, deepening with each consistent practice of the silence, gradually shifts the interior cause from which the conditions of life are expressed. Enter the silence daily. Give it the time and the consistency it deserves. It will give you everything in return. Emotions and feelings. Most people believe their emotions happen to them. Something occurs in the outer world and an emotion arises in response. Someone says something hurtful and anger appears. A plan falls through and disappointment arrives. An opportunity presents itself and excitement follows. The outer event causes the inner feeling. This is the ordinary understanding of how emotions work, and it feels so natural and so obvious that questioning it seems almost absurd. But Haanel questions it directly, and what he reveals in this chapter changes the entire relationship between your inner emotional life and your outer experience. The emotions you habitually feel are not primarily responses to outer events. They are the primary creative force shaping those outer events. The feeling comes first at the deeper level. The outer event that appears to cause it is, in many cases, the expression of it. This is a radical inversion of the ordinary understanding, and it requires careful examination before its practical implications become clear. Here is what Haanel actually means. Every emotion carries a specific quality of inner energy. Fear carries one quality, confidence carries another. Resentment carries one quality, gratitude carries another. Love carries one quality, hostility carries another. These are not merely different labels for different subjective experiences. They are genuinely different qualities of inner energy that impress the subconscious mind in genuinely different ways and set genuinely different creative processes in motion. The emotion of fear, held consistently and genuinely at the inner level, impresses the subconscious with the reality of danger and threat and the inevitability of bad outcomes. The subconscious receives that impression and works to express it in outer conditions. Not to punish the person who is afraid, but simply because that is what the subconscious does. It expresses what it genuinely holds. The emotion of confidence, held consistently and genuinely, impresses the subconscious with the reality of capacity and possibility and the expectation of good outcomes. The subconscious receives that impression and works to express it in outer conditions instead. The habitual emotional life of an individual is therefore one of the most powerful determinants of the conditions of that individual's experience. More powerful in many cases than their conscious intentions or their outer efforts. Because emotions reach the subconscious with a depth and an immediacy that intellectual thought alone rarely achieves. This is both challenging and liberating. It is challenging because it means that the emotional patterns most people carry, patterns established over years or decades of habitual response to the circumstances of life, are continuously creating the conditions they are supposedly only reacting to. The fear creates the conditions that justify more fear. The resentment creates the conditions that generate more things to resent. The pattern reinforces itself in a cycle that feels impossible to break precisely because the outer evidence always seems to justify the inner feeling. It is liberating because it means that changing the habitual emotional pattern changes the cycle at its source. When the inner emotional quality genuinely shifts, the outer conditions that were its expression shift with it. And the new conditions generate new emotional responses that reinforce the new inner pattern instead. Haanel is careful to distinguish between genuine emotional shift and the performance of positive emotion without genuine inner change. Forcing yourself to feel enthusiastic when you genuinely feel fearful does not impress the subconscious with enthusiasm. The subconscious is not deceived by surface performance. It responds to what is genuinely present at the deeper level, to the real quality of inner feeling that underlies whatever expression the conscious mind is attempting to project. Genuine emotional shift happens through understanding, through the gradual deepening of a truer and more accurate inner conviction about what is real and what is possible, through the consistent practice of returning attention to what is genuinely good and genuinely present, rather than to what is feared and lacking. Through the kind of daily work in the silence that allows the deeper emotional quality of connection to universal mind to become a genuine, felt reality rather than an intellectual concept. As the understanding deepens, as the inner conviction becomes more genuine, the emotional quality naturally shifts, not through performance, through genuine inner change at the level where emotional patterns actually live, and the outer conditions follow the shift, they always do. Because they were always following the inner feeling. That was always the direction of causation. The LAW of attraction, there is a law that has been discussed, debated, misunderstood, and oversimplified more than almost any other idea in the history of human thought. Most people have heard of it. Most people have formed an opinion about it. And most people, whether they believe in it enthusiastically or dismiss it entirely, are working with a version of it that is so incomplete that it produces either disappointment or confusion when they actually try to apply it. Haanel cuts through all of that in this chapter. He presents the law of attraction not as a mystical wish fulfillment mechanism, not as a cosmic ordering system where you think about what you want and wait for the universe to deliver it, but as a precise and lawful description of how the creative process we have been examining throughout this book actually works at the level of conditions and circumstances. Here is the law stated as precisely as Haanel intends it, like attracts like, not in a vague or metaphorical sense. In a precise and functional sense. The mental and emotional qualities that are genuinely held at the subconscious level attract into the individual's experience the conditions, the people, the opportunities, and the circumstances that correspond to those qualities. A mind genuinely holding abundance attracts conditions of abundance. A mind genuinely holding fear attracts conditions that justify fear. A mind genuinely holding confidence and creative expectation attracts the people and opportunities through which that confidence and expectation can be expressed and fulfilled. A mind genuinely holding resentment and limitation attracts the conditions that reinforce resentment and limitation. This is not punishment or reward. It is the simple and consistent operation of a law that works the same way for everyone without exception. But Haanel is very precise about what like actually means in this context. And this precision is what most popular presentations of the law of attraction miss entirely. Like does not mean surface similarity. It does not mean that thinking about money will attract money, or that saying the word abundance will produce abundant conditions. The subconscious mind is not impressed by surface thoughts or spoken words. It is impressed by the genuine deep quality of what is actually held at the interior level with real feeling and real conviction. What attracts is the genuine inner quality, not the performance of that quality, not the intellectual acknowledgement of it, the real thing. This means that the law of attraction is not something you activate through technique. It is something you align with through genuine inner development, through the consistent deepening of the interior qualities that correspond to what you genuinely want to experience, through the real cultivation of the inner conviction of abundance, of health, of genuine capability and genuine worth, that draws the corresponding outer conditions naturally and consistently. Haanel also addresses something about the law of attraction that is rarely discussed in popular presentations. He says the law works in both directions with equal consistency. It attracts the conditions that correspond to what is genuinely held at the subconscious level, regardless of whether those conditions are wanted or not. The person whose subconscious genuinely holds fear does not attract fearful conditions because they want to. They attract them because the law is impersonal and consistent. It responds to what is actually there rather than to what is consciously preferred. This is sobering, but it is also clarifying. Because it removes every external excuse for the conditions of your life and places the full creative responsibility exactly where it actually belongs, with the quality of what you are genuinely holding at the interior level, which is the only level at which you have genuine creative power. You cannot change the law is what it is. Consistent, impersonal, absolute. What you can change is what the law is working with, the quality of inner conviction that you are presenting to it. The genuine depth of the beliefs and feelings that your subconscious mind is currently holding and expressing. Change those, and the law changes what it produces for you. Not because the law has become more favorable, but because what you are presenting to it has become more aligned with what you genuinely want to experience. The law was always working perfectly. It always is. The subconscious mind as a servant. Most people are being run by their subconscious mind, not guiding it, not directing it. Being run by it, the habits they cannot break, the emotional reactions they cannot control. The patterns that repeat themselves in relationship after relationship, situation after situation, year after year, despite every conscious intention to change them. These are all the subconscious mind doing exactly what it was designed to do, expressing faithfully and consistently what it has been given. Running the programs it received, mostly without conscious awareness, over the course of a lifetime of experience. This is not a malfunction. It is the system working precisely as designed. The problem is not the subconscious mind itself. The problem is the relationship most people have with it. They are in the wrong position. They are the passenger when they should be the driver. They are being expressed by the subconscious when the subconscious should be serving the conscious direction of a genuinely aware and genuinely intentional mind. Haanel's central practical teaching in this chapter is a reorientation of that relationship. The subconscious mind is designed to be a servant, the most powerful, most capable, most tireless servant imaginable, connected to universal mind and its infinite creative resources, capable of managing complexity that would overwhelm any conscious effort, able to work continuously toward a chosen end without fatigue or distraction or the need for constant conscious supervision, but it must be given genuine direction. Clear, consistent, genuinely felt direction from a conscious mind that understands what it is doing and why. Most people never give it that direction deliberately. They leave it to run on the patterns it received in the past. And those patterns, formed in circumstances that no longer exist, in response to challenges that have long since passed, continue to shape the present experience of a person who has grown far beyond the conditions in which those patterns were formed. The practice of reclaiming conscious direction over the subconscious is the core practical work of the entire Master Key system. Every chapter has been preparing you for it, the understanding of how the subconscious works, the development of genuine concentration, the practice of the silence, the cultivation of constructive imagination and genuine emotional quality. All of it is preparation for this, for the moment when you stop being run by the subconscious and begin genuinely directing it. Haanel describes what this direction actually looks like in practical terms. It is not constant conscious management of every thought and feeling. That is neither possible nor desirable. The subconscious must be allowed to operate automatically in the vast majority of its functions. The conscious mind could not manage the complexity of what the subconscious handles every moment, even if it tried. What changes is the quality of the impressions being delivered to the subconscious through the conscious mind's deliberate activity. The clarity and consistency of the visualizations held in daily practice. The genuineness of the emotional quality cultivated through the practice of the silence. The deliberate direction of attention toward constructive thoughts and away from destructive ones. The consistent return to the inner conviction of what is genuinely true at the level of spirit, rather than the habitual drift back to the surface evidence of limitation. These deliberate activities of the conscious mind are the direction being given to the subconscious servant. They are the new instructions replacing the old patterns. And the subconscious, receiving genuine direction with the same faithfulness with which it received the old patterns, begins working from the new instructions with immediate and consistent effect. Haanel also addresses the quality of relationship with the subconscious that produces the best results. He does not recommend force. Attempting to force the subconscious into compliance through sheer willpower is working against the nature of the system. The subconscious does not respond well to force. It responds to genuine impression, to the quality of inner conviction that reaches it through the mechanism we have discussed throughout this book. He recommends something closer to trust. The trust of a person who genuinely understands the capabilities of the servant they are directing, who gives clear instructions and then allows the servant to work without constant interference, who maintains the direction without anxiously checking every moment whether the work is being done. The subconscious is extraordinarily capable. Give it clear direction, trust it to work, and get out of its way. The nature of truth: most people believe they are thinking with truth. They believe their assessment of themselves is accurate. Their understanding of what is possible for them is realistic. Their reading of what the world offers and what it withholds is honest and clear-eyed. They are not fooling themselves. They are simply seeing things as they are. But Haanel asks a question in this chapter that stops everything. What if what you believe to be true is simply what your subconscious mind has been conditioned to accept as true? What if the reality you are seeing so clearly is not reality itself, but the particular version of reality that your accumulated conditioning has made visible to you while hiding everything else? This is not a comfortable question. But it is the most important question you can ask about the quality of your own thinking, because the nature of truth, in Haanel's precise understanding, is not what most people assume it to be. Most people treat truth as fixed and external, as the set of facts about the world that exist independently of any individual mind, and that can be accurately perceived by anyone who looks honestly enough. In this view, truth is discovered, found, uncovered by careful observation of what is already there. Haanel does not deny that there are facts about the physical world that exist independently of individual perception. He is not saying that reality is entirely a mental construction with no objective content. He is making a more specific and more practical point. He is saying that the truth available to any individual mind is always filtered through the conditioning of that mind. That what a person perceives as possible or impossible, available or unavailable, real or unreal, is always shaped by the deep patterns of belief and conviction that their subconscious mind is working from. And those patterns are not necessarily accurate reflections of what is actually true at the level of universal mind and its infinite creative capacity. The person whose subconscious holds a deep conviction of limitation perceives a limited world, not because the world is actually limited, but because their conditioning filters out the evidence of possibility and makes the evidence of limitation vivid and undeniable. They are seeing truly within the limits of their conditioning, but their conditioning is not the truth. It is a particular and partial version of it. The person whose subconscious holds a genuine conviction of abundance and possibility perceives a world full of opportunity, not because they are deluded or naive, but because their conditioning allows them to perceive what the other person's conditioning filters out. They are also seeing truly within the limits of their conditioning, but their conditioning is closer to the actual truth of what universal mind makes available. This is why Haanel considers the development of a truer understanding of reality not merely an intellectual exercise, but a practical necessity for anyone working with these principles. Because, if your current understanding of what is true and possible is shaped by conditioning that is less than fully accurate, then working harder within that understanding will only produce more of the same limited results. The effort goes into reinforcing the conditioning rather than transcending it. The correction begins with the willingness to question what you currently accept as true about yourself and your possibilities, not to replace one set of fixed beliefs with another, but to hold your current beliefs more lightly, to recognize them as the products of conditioning rather than as accurate and final assessments of what is actually real, and to turn progressively and consistently toward the deeper truth available through the connection to universal mind. The truth that is not filtered through personal conditioning. The truth of what spirit actually is and what the individual, as its expression, actually has access to. This deeper truth is not something you construct through reasoning. It is something you receive through the genuine practice of the silence and the consistent cultivation of inner alignment with universal mind. It arrives not as an argument to be accepted, but as a direct inner knowing that gradually and consistently displaces the conditioned version of reality that was previously the only truth available. As the deeper truth deepens its hold on the subconscious, the perception of what is possible expands. Opportunities become visible that were previously invisible. Capacities become accessible that were previously unavailable. The world genuinely appears to change, not because the world has changed, because the truth available to the individual has moved closer to what the world actually is. And a mind seeing more truth has more to work with always. The LAW of growth, nothing in the universe stands still. Everything is either growing or declining, expanding or contracting, moving toward fuller expression or moving away from it. There is no neutral position. No stable middle ground where things simply remain as they are indefinitely. The universe does not operate that way. Life does not operate that way. And the creative process we have been examining throughout this book does not operate that way. This is the law of growth. And understanding it changes everything about how you approach the work of inner development. Most people treat personal development as a project, something with a beginning, a middle, and an end. A defined goal to be reached, after which the work is complete, and the results can simply be maintained without further effort. They work intensively toward a particular outcome, achieve it or fail to achieve it, and then either rest in the achievement or abandon the effort. But Haanel says this understanding fundamentally misreads the nature of the process. Growth is not a project. It is the fundamental nature of life itself expressing through the individual. It is what living things do, not occasionally, not when conditions are perfect, always, continuously. In whatever direction the conditions allow, a seed placed in good soil does not decide whether to grow. It grows because growth is what it is. The growth cannot be prevented as long as the conditions of life are present. It can be supported or obstructed, directed or misdirected. But it cannot be stopped. Life always moves toward fuller expression of itself. Your inner development works by the same law. The genuine impressions you make on the subconscious mind through consistent practice do not simply sit there waiting to be used. They grow, they deepen, they develop. They move naturally and inevitably toward fuller expression in the conditions of your outer life, as long as the conditions that support their growth are maintained. This means something practically significant. Every genuine step in the right direction counts more than it appears to count in the moment it is taken, because it is not just a step. It is the beginning of a growth process that will continue beyond that single moment and develop in ways that the step itself cannot reveal. A single genuine practice of the silence seems like a small thing. A single moment of genuine concentration on a clear image seems like a minor effort. A single conscious redirection of attention from fear to confidence seems almost trivial in the context of a lifetime of habitual patterns moving in the other direction. But each of these is a seed planted in the subconscious. And the subconscious, like good soil, does not simply hold what it receives, it grows it. Haanel also addresses the other direction of the law of growth with equal directness. If everything is either growing or declining, then the patterns you are not actively working to change are not simply standing still. They are either being reinforced by continued attention and emotional investment, or they are gradually losing their hold as that attention and investment is consistently redirected elsewhere. This is genuinely encouraging, because it means that the work of changing deep subconscious patterns does not require a dramatic confrontation with every negative belief or every destructive habit. It requires the consistent redirection of attention and energy toward the new patterns you are choosing to grow. As those new patterns receive consistent attention and consistent genuine feeling, they grow. And as they grow, they gradually displace the old patterns not through force, but through the natural process of life moving toward its fuller expression. The old patterns do not need to be fought. They need to be starved of the attention that feeds them, while the new patterns are consistently nourished. This is the practical wisdom of the law of growth applied to inner development. Haanel closes this chapter with an observation about the relationship between growth and time that is worth carrying carefully. He says that the law of growth operates on its own timeline, not the timeline the conscious mind would prefer, not the timeline that external pressure or impatience demands, but the natural timeline of genuine development, which is always exactly as long as genuine development requires, and never longer. The farmer cannot force the harvest by pulling at the crop. The harvest comes when the growth process has completed itself. The farmer's work is to maintain the conditions that support growth and trust the law that governs it. Your work is the same. Maintain the conditions. Trust the law. The growth is already happening. Creating the ideal, every great achievement began as an idea in someone's mind, not a vague wish, not a general sense that things could be better. A specific, clear, detailed idea of something that did not yet exist in physical form, but was completely real in the mind of the person who held it. The building before the foundation, the business before the first customer, the life before the first deliberate step toward it. Every outer achievement is the expression of an inner ideal that preceded it, always, without exception. The physical form follows the mental form. The visible follows the invisible. The effect follows the cause. Haanel calls this the creation of the ideal, and he considers it one of the most important practical activities available to anyone working seriously with the master key system. But he is very specific about what a genuine ideal actually is and how it differs from the vague aspirations that most people mistake for ideals. A genuine ideal is specific. It has clear definition. It is not a general sense of wanting more success or more abundance or more fulfillment. It is a precise and detailed mental picture of a specific reality. The specific conditions, the specific achievements, the specific quality of life that genuinely represents the fullest and most complete expression of what the individual is capable of becoming. A genuine ideal is also aligned with the creative principle of universal mind, not merely a personal preference or an ego-driven desire for acquisition and status, but a genuine expression of the individual's deepest creative potential. Something that, when fully expressed, contributes genuine value to the world and not merely to the individual holding it. Haanel makes a distinction here that is easy to miss but practically essential. He separates ideals that are aligned with the creative principle from desires that are driven by fear or deficiency. The desire for wealth that is motivated primarily by the fear of poverty is not a genuine ideal. It is a fear dressed in the clothing of aspiration. And because the subconscious responds to what is genuinely held at the deeper level, it receives the fear rather than the aspiration and expresses the condition of fear rather than the condition of wealth. A genuine ideal carries a completely different inner quality. It is held not from a sense of deficiency seeking to be filled, but from a sense of creative potential seeking to be expressed. It feels expansive rather than desperate. It generates energy rather than consuming it. It is oriented toward contribution and expression rather than acquisition and escape. This inner quality is not something you manufacture through effort. It is something that emerges naturally as the understanding developed throughout this book deepens, and the connection to universal mind becomes more genuine. As you progressively recognize yourself as an expression of spirit rather than a separate individual struggling against an indifferent universe, the quality of your ideals naturally shifts. They become larger, more genuinely creative, more aligned with what universal mind is seeking to express through your particular individual center. The practical work of creating the ideal is the work of developing the clearest and most specific possible mental picture of this fuller expression, of bringing the ideal from a vague sense of possibility into a sharp, detailed, vivid inner reality that the subconscious mind can receive as a genuine condition and work toward expressing. Haanel recommends returning to this ideal daily, not anxiously, not checking whether it has arrived yet, but with the quality of genuine inner conviction and genuine creative engagement that keeps it alive and growing at the subconscious level. That maintains the impression fresh and clear rather than allowing it to fade into the background of daily mental activity. He also addresses what happens as the ideal begins moving toward physical expression. The movement is rarely linear. It rarely looks from the outside like a straightforward progression from intention to outcome. It involves unexpected developments, apparent detours, circumstances that seem unrelated to the ideal, but are in fact part of the process through which universal mind is organizing the conditions of its expression. The person who understands this remains oriented toward the ideal through these developments rather than being thrown off course by them. They recognize that the creative process is working even when the outer evidence does not yet clearly reflect it. They maintain their inner conviction and their daily practice through the apparent detours, because they understand that the detours are part of the process rather than evidence that the process has failed. Hold the ideal clearly. Return to it daily with genuine inner conviction. Trust the process that is already in motion. The outer expression will follow. It always does. Bring out what is within. There is a misconception at the heart of how most people approach achievement. They believe that what they want is outside them. That success, abundance, capability, genuine fulfillment, these are things that exist somewhere in the outer world, and that the task of a lifetime is to go out and get them, to acquire them, to bring them in from outside and make them yours. This belief drives an enormous amount of human effort. And it produces an enormous amount of frustration, because the things most deeply sought through outer acquisition have a consistent and maddening tendency to remain just out of reach. The financial freedom that will finally allow relaxation. The achievement that will finally produce genuine confidence. The circumstance that will finally create the inner state that makes life feel genuinely good. They remain ahead. Always ahead. Just beyond the next accomplishment, the next acquisition, the next change in outer conditions. Haanel says the reason is simple and precise. You are looking in the wrong direction. Everything you are seeking in the outer world is already present within you as potential, as the unmanifested creative capacity of universal mind expressing through your individual center. The wealth, the capability, the genuine fulfillment, the quality of life that seems so distant when approached from the outside is available from the inside right now. Not as a completed physical condition, but as a genuine creative potential that is seeking expression, and that will find expression in outer conditions as it is genuinely developed and genuinely expressed from within. This reorients the entire project of achievement. Instead of going out to get what you want, you bring out what is already within. Instead of acquiring capability from an external source, you develop and express the capability that is native to your deepest nature as an expression of universal mind. Instead of waiting for outer conditions to produce the inner states you desire, you cultivate those inner states genuinely, and allow the outer conditions to follow as their natural expression. Haanel is not saying that outer action is unnecessary. He is saying that outer action taken from this inner orientation is completely different in quality and completely different in effectiveness from outer action taken from the belief that what you want is outside you and must be acquired through effort and strategy alone. The person who acts from genuine inner development, from the real cultivation of the inner qualities and convictions that correspond to what they want to experience, brings a quality of creative power to their outer action that the person acting from deficiency and acquisition never has access to. Their action is aligned with the creative process rather than separate from it. It draws on the resources of universal mind rather than the limited resources of individual effort alone, and the results reflect this difference consistently and unmistakably over time. Haanel describes what bringing out what is within actually looks like in practical terms. It begins with the genuine recognition that what you are seeking is not absent from your life because it has not yet arrived from outside. It is not yet fully expressed in your life because it has not yet been fully developed and expressed from within. The distinction sounds subtle, but it is everything. One orientation produces the anxious reaching and grasping of someone who believes they lack something essential. The other produces the calm, confident, creative activity of someone who understands that they are developing and expressing what is genuinely theirs by nature. The daily practices of the Master Key system are all expressions of this inner development. The practice of the silence develops the genuine connection to universal mind from which all creative capacity flows. The practice of visualization develops the capacity to form and hold clear ideals at the subconscious level. The practice of concentration develops the quality of focused mental energy through which those ideals impress the subconscious most powerfully. Each practice is bringing out something that is within, developing and expressing more fully what is already present as potential in the individual's connection to universal mind. And as each capacity is more fully developed and more fully expressed, the outer conditions of life shift to reflect the new inner reality. Not because something has been acquired from outside, but because something genuine has been expressed from within. This is the direction of real achievement, always inward first, then outward, as the natural expression of what has genuinely developed within. Harmony, there is a quality that the most consistently successful people in every field share, not the most talented, not the most intelligent, not the most driven or the most strategically gifted, the most consistently successful, the ones whose results hold up over time, whose achievements do not collapse under their own weight, whose lives, examined closely, reveal not just outer accomplishment but a genuine quality of inner steadiness that makes the outer accomplishment sustainable. That quality is harmony, not harmony in the soft or sentimental sense. Not the absence of challenge or the avoidance of difficulty, but the deep inner alignment between the individual's thought, feeling, and action that Haanel considers the foundation of all genuinely sustained achievement. Most people live in a state of inner conflict that they have become so accustomed to that they no longer notice it as conflict. They consciously intend one thing while subconsciously expecting another. They work toward goals their surface mind has chosen while their deeper emotional life remains unconvinced that those goals are genuinely achievable or genuinely deserved. They project confidence outward while inwardly maintaining the habitual conviction of limitation that has shaped their experience for years. This inner conflict is not merely uncomfortable. It is directly destructive to the creative process. Because the creative process, as we have established throughout this book, responds to what is genuinely held at the subconscious level, not to what the conscious mind is attempting to project or perform. When the conscious intention and the subconscious conviction are pointing in different directions, the creative process receives conflicting instructions. And conflicting instructions produce inconsistent, unreliable, and often frustrating results regardless of how much outer effort is applied. Harmony is the resolution of this conflict, the genuine alignment of conscious intention with subconscious conviction. The state in which what the conscious mind is working toward and what the subconscious mind genuinely holds as its operative reality are the same thing, pointing in the same direction, working together rather than against each other. When this alignment is genuine, the creative process works with a consistency and an effectiveness that the conflicted mind never experiences. The outer effort and the inner creative power are moving in the same direction simultaneously. The results are not just better, they are qualitatively different. There is a quality of flow, of natural progression, of things working as they are designed to work, that is immediately recognizable to anyone who has experienced it even briefly. Haanel describes harmony at 3 levels that are distinct but deeply interconnected. The first is harmony within the individual mind itself, the alignment of conscious intention with subconscious conviction that we have just discussed. This is the foundation. Without it, the other levels of harmony cannot be fully realized. The second is harmony between the individual and their immediate environment. The quality of relationship between the individual's inner creative process and the outer circumstances, relationships, and conditions of their daily life. When the inner creative process is genuinely aligned and working freely, it naturally draws the outer environment into greater harmony with it. Relationships improve, circumstances shift, opportunities appear that were previously invisible. Not through magical intervention, but through the consistent operation of the creative law, responding to a more genuinely aligned inner state. The third is harmony between the individual and universal mind itself. The deep alignment of the individual's creative process with the larger creative intelligence that underlies all things. When this alignment is genuine, the individual is not working against the current of universal creative intelligence, but with it. The resources available to them expand beyond what individual effort alone can access. The guidance available to them becomes clearer and more reliable. The creative process works with a depth and a consistency that reflects the depth of the connection to its universal source. These three levels of harmony develop together. You cannot fully achieve harmony at the third level without genuine work at the first. The inner alignment of the individual mind is the foundation from which the deeper harmonies become possible. And the path to that inner alignment is precisely the path this entire book has been describing: the daily practice of genuine concentration, the consistent cultivation of constructive thought and genuine emotional quality, the regular return to the silence where the connection to universal mind is directly experienced rather than merely understood, the patient, consistent, undramatic work of replacing old subconscious patterns with truer and more genuinely aligned ones. This work is the work of harmony. And harmony is the condition from which everything else genuinely and sustainably flows. Right thinking: everything begins with a thought, not a feeling, not an action, not a circumstance or a decision or an opportunity. A thought, the most fundamental unit of the creative process. The point at which everything that will ever exist in your outer experience first comes into being at the interior level, and yet most people give almost no deliberate attention to the quality of their thinking. They think whatever arises. They follow whatever thread the surface mind produces. They allow the quality of their inner mental life to be determined entirely by whatever outer circumstances happen to be present, rather than by any conscious choice about what kind of thinking actually serves them. Haanel calls this the most expensive habit a human being can maintain. Because if thought is the origin of all outer conditions, then the quality of your thinking is the single most consequential thing about you. More consequential than your circumstances, more consequential than your history, more consequential than any external resource or any outer advantage or disadvantage. The quality of your habitual thinking determines the quality of your habitual experience with a consistency that nothing else approaches. Right thinking, in Haanel's precise understanding, is not positive thinking in the superficial sense of forcing cheerful thoughts regardless of circumstances. It is something more fundamental and more demanding than that. Right thinking is thinking that is aligned with the truth of what universal mind actually is. Thinking that reflects the genuine reality of abundance, of creative capacity, of the unlimited potential available to an individual mind genuinely connected to universal intelligence. Thinking that sees circumstances as conditions to be worked with rather than as fixed and final definitions of what is possible. Wrong thinking is thinking that is misaligned with that truth. Thinking that accepts the evidence of current limitations as the final word on what is real and possible. Thinking that treats fear and scarcity and impossibility as accurate descriptions of the universe, rather than as the temporary expressions of a conditioned and partially informed perspective. The difference between right thinking and wrong thinking is not a difference in intellectual content alone. It is a difference in creative power. Right thinking sets the creative process in motion in a direction that produces expanding conditions. Wrong thinking sets the same creative process in motion in a direction that produces contracting conditions. The law is the same. The direction of its application is entirely different. Haanel is precise about what cultivating right thinking actually requires. It begins with the development of what he calls mental initiative. The genuine capacity to choose what you think about rather than simply thinking whatever arises. Most people have almost no mental initiative in this sense. Their thinking is almost entirely reactive. Something happens and a thought follows. A fear arises and the mind follows it. A doubt appears and the mind entertains it. The content of inner mental life is determined almost entirely by outer stimulus rather than by conscious choice. Mental initiative is the capacity to interrupt this reactive pattern. To notice what the mind is doing, and to choose deliberately whether to continue in that direction or to redirect towards something more aligned with right thinking. It is not the suppression of unwanted thoughts. It is the deliberate exercise of the conscious mind's authority over the direction of its own activity. This capacity develops through exactly the practices Haanel has been prescribing throughout this book. The daily practice of concentration develops the ability to hold the mind on a chosen object rather than following every arising thought. The practice of the silence develops the quality of inner awareness that makes the mind's activity more visible and therefore more subject to conscious direction. The consistent cultivation of constructive imagination develops the habit of reaching toward possibility rather than dwelling in limitation. Each practice is an exercise of mental initiative, and like every genuine exercise, it builds the capacity it employs. The more consistently it is practiced, the more naturally and effectively it operates. Haanel closes this chapter with a thought about the relationship between right thinking and genuine wisdom. He says that wisdom is not the accumulation of information or the refinement of intellectual analysis. It is the capacity to think from the level of universal mind rather than from the limited perspective of conditioned individual experience. To see situations as they actually are rather than as personal conditioning has learned to see them. To respond to circumstances from the fullness of genuine creative capacity rather than from the contracted perspective of habitual fear and limitation. Wisdom develops as right thinking deepens. As the connection to universal mind becomes more genuine and more consistent. As the individual perspective gradually expands toward something closer to the truth of what spirit actually is. Think rightly. Think consistently. Think from the level of what you actually are. Everything else follows from that. Service, there is a principle that most people who study success and achievement eventually encounter, and most of them misunderstand it. The principle is this. The degree of genuine success available to any individual is directly proportional to the degree of genuine service they provide to others. Most people hear this and think it is a moral instruction, a reminder to be generous, a call to prioritize others over self. And they either embrace it as an ethical ideal or resist it as an impractical sentiment that ignores the realities of competitive life. But Haanel is not making a moral argument, he is making a creative one, and the distinction matters enormously for understanding what service actually is, and why it is so central to the entire master key system. Service, in Haanel's precise understanding, is not self-sacrifice. It is not the subordination of individual interest to the interests of others. It is the genuine orientation of creative capacity toward the creation of real value for real people, toward solving genuine problems, meeting genuine needs, contributing something that genuinely improves the conditions of life for those who receive it. This orientation is not in conflict with individual interest. It is the most direct expression of it. Because the individual who is genuinely oriented toward the creation of value for others is an individual whose creative process is aligned with the creative principle of universal mind. And that alignment is the condition from which genuine and sustained abundance flows most freely and most consistently. Here is why this is a creative principle rather than merely an ethical one. Universal mind is by its nature creative and expansive. It moves always toward fuller expression, toward the creation of more, the development of more, the expression of more of its own infinite creative potential through the individual centers through which it operates. When an individual's creative activity is aligned with this fundamental direction, when it is genuinely oriented toward creating genuine value and contributing genuine good, it is moving with the current of universal mind rather than against it. And when you move with the current of universal mind, the resources, the guidance, the creative capacity of universal intelligence are available to support your activity in ways that individual effort alone could never generate. When an individual's creative activity is oriented primarily toward personal acquisition, toward getting rather than giving, toward accumulation rather than contribution, it is moving in a direction that is misaligned with the creative principle of universal mind. Not because selfishness is morally wrong, but because it is creatively inefficient. It cuts the individual off from the deeper current of creative power that flows most freely through activities oriented toward genuine contribution. Haanel also addresses something about service that is often misunderstood. Genuine service does not require the sacrifice of individual well-being. The individual who serves most effectively is not the individual who depletes themselves in service to others. It is the individual who develops their genuine capacities most fully and then applies those capacities in ways that create the most genuine value for others. Full expression and genuine service are not in conflict. They are the same thing approached from two different directions. The most valuable service you can provide is the fullest possible expression of your genuine creative potential in ways that genuinely benefit others. Developing your capacities is itself a form of service, because capacities developed and expressed create value, and value created serves. Haanel closes this chapter with a thought about the relationship between service and the law of attraction that brings the entire discussion into sharp, practical focus. He says that the individual whose creative activity is genuinely oriented towards service is in the most favorable possible position relative to the law of attraction. Because they are consistently generating the inner qualities of genuine interest in others, of creative engagement with real problems, of the satisfaction of genuine contribution, that attract the conditions, the resources, and the opportunities through which that contribution can be made at an ever-expanding level. The service orientation is not a constraint on abundance. It is its most reliable source. Give genuinely, create real value, contribute something that actually matters. And watch what the creative law produces in return. The master KEY, you have arrived at the end of this book, but not at the end of the work, because the work this book describes has no end. It is not a project with a completion date, it is a direction. A way of engaging with your own mind, and with the universe that, once genuinely understood and genuinely adopted, becomes the operating principle of an entire life rather than the content of a course of study. Everything covered in the 23 chapters that preceded this one has been preparation for a single, unified understanding, not 23 separate ideas to be remembered and applied individually. One understanding expressed from 23 different angles. One truth approached from 23 different directions. The same truth every time. Your mind is the primary creative force in your life, not your circumstances, not your history, not the decisions of other people or the state of the economy or the particular challenges your situation presents. Your mind, the quality of what you genuinely hold at the subconscious level. The consistency of the inner conviction from which the creative process of your life operates moment by moment and day by day. This is the master key, not a technique, not a practice, not a set of steps to follow in the correct order. An understanding, the genuine, deeply held, subconsciously impressed recognition of what your mind actually is and what it actually does. That it is not a passive observer of your experience, but its primary creator. That the outer world of your circumstances is always, and without exception, the expression of the inner world of your conviction and belief. Haanel closes this book by pointing to what becomes possible when this understanding is not merely intellectual, but genuinely operative. When it has moved from the conscious mind, where it was first encountered as an interesting idea, into the subconscious mind, where it becomes the living foundation from which everything else is expressed. The person in whom this understanding is genuinely operative does not experience life the same way as the person in whom it remains an intellectual concept. They do not experience circumstances as things happening to them. They experience them as expressions of a creative process they are actively participating in. When conditions are favorable, they recognize the inner alignment that is producing them and work to deepen that alignment further. When conditions are difficult, they do not experience them as evidence of failure or as proof that the principles do not work. They experience them as information about the current state of the interior cause and as the starting point for deeper inner work. They are never victims of their circumstances, not because their circumstances are always easy, but because they understand the relationship between interior cause and exterior condition well enough to know that the circumstances are always workable, that the interior cause can always be shifted, that the creative process can always be more fully aligned with the truth of what universal mind is, and what the individual as its expression genuinely has access to. This understanding produces a quality of inner freedom that is entirely independent of outer conditions. The freedom of someone who knows they are not at the mercy of what is happening around them, who knows they have access to a creative power that is not limited by present circumstances, who knows that the conditions of tomorrow are being shaped by the quality of inner life being maintained today. Haanel also points to the expanding nature of this work, to the way in which genuine inner development does not plateau, but continues to open new levels of possibility as the understanding deepens. Each genuine step in the development of inner alignment opens access to a fuller expression of universal mind through the individual center. Each deepening of the subconscious impression of what is genuinely true expands the range of what becomes possible in outer experience. Each more complete harmony between conscious intention and subconscious conviction produces a more consistently effective creative process. There is no ceiling on this development. The source it draws on is without limit. And the individual capacity to receive and express what that source makes available grows consistently with the genuine work of inner development. This is not a promise of effortless perfection. Genuine inner development is real work. It requires genuine consistency, genuine patience, genuine willingness to return to the practices, and the understanding again and again through the inevitable periods when progress is not visible, and doubt is more immediately present than conviction. But it is work that compounds. Each genuine step builds on the one before. Each deepening of inner alignment makes the next deepening more accessible. The momentum of genuine inner development, once established and consistently maintained, becomes one of the most powerful forces in a human life. You have the key, you have always had it. It was never outside you waiting to be found. It was always within you waiting to be used. The door it opens is the door to the fullest possible expression of what you genuinely are as an individual center of universal mind. Open it, walk through, and begin living from the other side.